For years, Port Charles has been the proving ground and the prison of a man who mastered silence better than most people master speech. Jason learned how to breathe in rooms full of gun smoke and grief, how to hold steady when lives collapsed around him, how to be the point of contact between chaos and a fragile kind of order. He built a reputation that traveled faster than sirens and outlived headlines, a reputation that required him to stand still while the rest of the world demanded he move. Somewhere beneath the scar tissue of obligation, the city taught him a corrosive lesson, that loyalty can be the last name of loneliness. Now, at last, a new lesson calls to him with the bite of sea air and the hum of train tracks, a whisper that sounds like freedom and looks like a one-way ticket. Jason wants to leave Port Charles. He wants to step out of the narrow corridor of his legend and into a wide, uncharted road with Britt, the only person who makes departure feel less like abandonment and more like a beginning. Britt's presence sharpens all the edges that complacency had dulled. She does not pull him back into his history, she drags the future toward him. With her, the world expands beyond safe houses and backroom deals into strange markets, midnight ferries, nameless coastlines, cities mapped not by alliances but by the flavor of street food and the angle of sunset across unfamiliar water. Britt brings a defiant kind of tenderness, the kind that refuses to apologize for wanting more than survival. She is a reminder that the heart has a right to its itineraries, that the body is not merely a container for other people's emergencies, and that the past, no matter how loud, does not get the final vote. In the calculus of his life, she is the first variable that promises a solution that isn't paid for in blood. But leaving Port Charles is not the same as leaving the life. The city has a memory and a reflex. His absence would send ripples through corners where his name is shorthand for stability, even if that stability was constructed from compromises. Allies who rely on him will call it a betrayal, enemies will call it a green light. The police will wonder if a quiet departure is a rebranding effort, a strategic retreat before another storm. And the people who love him, who have learned to measure their days by whether Jason is in or out of danger, will struggle to believe that danger is not the only way he knows how to exist. The move is not geographic, it is moral. It is an act of refusal in a town that thrives on consent. He is refusing to be available to every crisis, to be the first number on every list, to be the last man standing because he never allowed himself to sit down. The impulse to go is not a rejection of loyalty but a redefinition of it. Loyalty to the man he has become, not to the myth he perfected. He knows the toll of endless nights and unfinished conversations, of vows made on hospital floors and broken under the weight of new emergencies. He remembers the celebrated shocks of adrenaline that come with victory, and the silent, punishing aftermath when the city sleeps and he cannot. This is not about running, it is about choosing a destination that is not always triage. Britt stands at that crossroads with an itinerary that fits on a napkin and a courage that does not need permission. Together they sketch a plan, a season of departure that becomes a year if it fits, a year that becomes a life if it heals. No grand statements, no press of nostalgia, just a passport and the audacity to let time pass without filling it with war. There will be resistance. Not everyone knows how to bless another person's freedom. Old alliances are contractual in spirit even when no pen was lifted, and the unspoken clause always reads the same: you are ours until we declare you safe to be your own. Those who depend on his presence will argue that the void he creates will be quickly occupied by worse men. They will urge him to wait for a better moment, a safer horizon, a more stable peace. But Jason understands that moments like that don't exist, they are the mirages that keep good people chained to bad patterns. He has stood guard long enough to know that protecting a place with your whole life is not the same as saving it. Sometimes, the bravest thing a sentinel can do is step away from the wall and trust that the dawn will come without him. Britt isn't a consolation prize for battle fatigue, she is the co-author of a different narrative. Their connection doesn't sanitize his history or deny it. It reframes it. With her, Jason can admit that a body built to endure can also be taught to enjoy. He can replace the ritual of scanning exits with the practice of studying landscapes, swap coded calls for postcards sent from places that have never heard his name. The work of unlearning will be its own kind of journey, discovering what he likes when he isn't compensating for what everyone else needs, recognizing hunger that isn't for danger, trusting sleep in a bed that isn't the temporary stop between two alarms. Brit, for her part, finds a version of herself she put on hold too, the woman who wanted the world to be bigger than corridors and case files, who once believed that brilliance didn't have to be weaponized, that joy could be the companion of competence rather than its enemy. The itinerary starts simple by design, a map that refuses to intimidate with ambition. A drive down the coast with no destination beyond the next turn. A ferry to an island where their phones can disappear into drawers. A room with thin curtains and thick morning light. A museum where no one rushes them, an alley cafe where the proprietor remembers their order, a rented scooter that breaks down and forces them to talk to a stranger who fixes it with a laugh and a story about his mother. There are no heroics in these scenes, no crisis to solve, but there is repair, of breath, of spine, of the way shoulders can lower when they are no longer braced for impact. This is what healing looks like in people who have forgotten that healing is allowed. And yet the past does not vanish on command. News travels, rumors take flights they do not book. Port Charles will shadow them in unexpected ways, a call from someone who misdials and leaves a voicemail heavy with worry, a headline that catches his eye in a foreign cafe about a dust-up back home, a familiar name overheard on a dock from tourists who have no idea they are speaking the language of ghosts. Each echo offers a test. Return and repeat, or stay and trust? The tests are not cruel, they are clarifying. They teach him that caring is not the same as returning, that distance can be an expression of faith in the people he trained to stand on their own feet, and that every absence can be a gift if it makes space for others to grow. Brit's own reckonings arrive in quieter ways. Freedom goes to work on her at the cellular level. Away from the perpetual triage of other people's dramas, her mind begins to wander without policing itself. Ideas for research that never made it out of notebooks, a lazy fascination with the way certain languages lean toward tenderness in their phrases for weather, a habit of sketching buildings on napkins while Jason reads maps he doesn't quite follow. She realizes that loving a man known for his steadiness doesn't mean standing still beside him. It means moving in parallel, intersecting without merging, allowing the relationship to be a road rather than a room. Together, they dismantle the binary that kept them trapped, that a life is either useful or happy. They begin to imagine a life that is both, and discover that usefulness multiplied by happiness yields something like meaning. Of course, meaning provokes the city. Port Charles is a master at writing epilogues for people who dare to leave. It will predict failure. It will seed doubt. It will consider the departure a temporary rebellion destined to collapse under the weight of habit. But epilogues are opinions, not outcomes. Jason knows that the true test will not be whether he can survive without the rush of danger but whether he can sustain the slower, subtler rhythm of contentment. Can he allow a day to end without a story worth retelling? Can he find satisfaction in a meal rather than a mission? Can he trust that nothing is happening when nothing is happening? These are radical questions for a man who once measured worth by the distance between himself and disaster. When the first real challenge arrives, a message that someone he respects is in trouble, the kind of trouble he could end with one decisive gesture, it does not explode their peace, it interrogates it. Brit watches him weigh the call with the care of a man sorting truth from reflex. He does not dismiss it, he does not leap. He asks the only question that honors the life he is building: is my return necessary, or merely familiar? The answer, delivered by the same instincts that once drove him into the fire, is quieter than any order he has ever obeyed. He makes calls, shares knowledge, offers strategy, delegates to people who have earned the right to handle their own crises. Then he stands down. The world does not end, Port Charles does not collapse, the man he was does not evaporate. What changes is the location of his worth, from the front line to the long view, from emergency response to durable wisdom. The beauty of travel is not an escape but an exposure. Jason and Brit learn the choreography of adaptation, how to be guests and not conquerors, how to hold curiosity without greed, how to let small towns teach them manners their old lives discouraged. When they inevitably talk about the future, it is not in the language of vows carved in stone but in the grammar of promise made daily, to check in with themselves before they check on the world, to keep something unscheduled every week, to forgive themselves when they lapse into old patterns and to celebrate the days when they do not. They build traditions that don't need witnesses, sunrise walks that turn into silly races, receipts folded into makeshift bookmarks, a habit of buying a local cookbook in every city and cooking one dish together no matter how badly it goes. In these rituals, they learn how to be ordinary without feeling diminished. Eventually, as all journeys do, this one circles back to the idea of home. Not Port Charles as an address, but home as a practice. They understand that a return might come later, and that if it does, it will not be a surrender but a choice made by different people than the ones who left. If they go back, they will bring with them a weathered competence that does not require constant crisis to prove itself. If they do not, they will continue to seed the world with their quiet resilience, two travelers who learned how to turn adrenaline into presence. Either way, the city loses its monopoly on their identity. The legend of Jason Morgan can remain where it belongs, in the stories other people tell, while the man lives a life that does not need an audience to justify itself. This is the drama beneath the plot line, the heart story behind the headlines. A man steps away from the machine that fed on his courage and a woman reaches for a map that honors her appetite for wonder. Together, they decline a destiny that was never written in ink and draft a route where survival is not the finish line but the prologue. The stakes are not a warehouse standoff or a courtroom verdict. The stakes are whether two people who have always been defined by emergencies can learn to be defined by mornings. If they can, if Jason can teach his hands to lift a suitcase without imagining it as a shield, if Britt can let her laughter be louder than her caution, then Port Charles will have produced something far rarer than a hero. It will have produced a man who knows when to step down and a woman who knows how to step out, and a love that thrives not because it is tested by fire but because it is tended by choice. So if you're looking for explosions, the itinerary will disappoint you. The fireworks have been traded for the slow burn of craft, the craft of staying when staying serves your soul, the craft of leaving when leaving saves it, the craft of being two complete people who choose each other without needing to be consumed. The city that raised Jason may never understand that kind of victory. But understanding is optional. Blessing is optional. The only necessary permission is the one he grants himself, the right to become more than a legend, to grow older without hardening, to love a woman who hands him a passport and, with it, the authority to decide what his life will mean. And with that, the departure is no longer a rumor or a fantasy. It is a road opening under their feet, the first mile of a map that is not owed to anyone and is, therefore, truly theirs.